So let's go a little bit over your career. When did you start writing?
I started doing aliens fan fiction at school, well, about 12, 13, and I just did stories. I started doing stories myself. So I've always enjoyed writing. I've always done it as like just as a kind of form of therapy in a way, just to get things out of my system. I've always admired authors, so I've always had this dream at the back of my head that I'd want to be a writer. And then, what was it, about 12, well, maybe 13 years ago now, I found out I was going to be a dad. So I thought if I ever got a chance to be a writer, I need to start it now before the kids come along. I need to sort of, because I know they're just going to suck all my time. So I did a short story and I sent it off, and I won first prize, 100 quid or £100. And I kind of started from there. I just started doing more and more short stories, and just didn't stop really until recently.
Did you come from a smaller area, like a more rural area? It's more. I know you're in England, but
uh,
there are way more rural areas and way more urban areas.
it's kind of weird. Originally, where I live, this was like back in the 19th century. It's 5 villages, and then they discovered iron ore nearby, and then it kind of be like kind of boom town. So where I live in Scunthorpe, it's classed as an industrial garden town. So it's industrial and rural. So we're like quite a decent sized town, but we're surrounded by fields. So it's a weird place, and it's actually set. It's an industrial island as well. It's kind of set up above the surrounding area. So it was surrounded by fields and beautiful farmland. So but in the center, it's just like industrial. It's like Blade Runner.
Okay, well, what I'm getting at with that is like I lived all over the place. I'm a military brat, so like some are more like rural areas and some are more urban areas. But the more rural areas, like I have to search out the stuff I like the cool movies and the cool books and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just kind of wondering how much you were exposed to that sort of stuff.
Well, I liked exploring as a kid. So there's quite a few like abandoned buildings, like abandoned like mines and stuff. Um, so I don't know, growing up as a kid, we didn't really have, we obviously didn't have the internet. We had like a video shop, and that was kind of my go-to place for horror. I got into horror quite young. I was about maybe 10, 11, 12. And I used to get my mum to write me notes to the video shop people. I said, oh, please allow my son to get an 18 certificate film. So I used to go 11, 12, 13. I'd take that. And that was because we didn't have the access to like media people do now. You had to wait for films to come out. So that's how I got around it.
What about a local library? Do you have a local library?
I used to hit that for any horror books. There's one book. It was called Swamp by Peter Tremaine, and it's set in the Florida Everglades. And this kind of ancient reptilian beast comes out, and it starts eating all these tourists. And I just remember the cover is just like this creature coming out of this primordial swamp. And I just remember just falling in love with it. And I'd been to Florida before on holiday, so I kind of knew what like the swamps are like. So, but it's such a good novel for a kid to read. And I know I just remember picking it up. I must have gone about maybe 3 or 4 times. I just kept rereading it, and yeah, tiny little library. And don't have many horror books, but the ones that did have, I've read them all.
Did that help spark your imagination? Did like were you coming up with stuff immediately, or were you more like inspired by it and freaking how are you gonna do something? Like I know for me personally, I'd read stuff. I was like, that's awesome, but I don't want to copy him. But it's like hard for me to come up with like cool, intricate stuff that obviously more like longer in the game writers had come up with. Like I'm only 8 and I'm reading this. I'm like, how do you think of those awesome ideas?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It kind of put me onto the idea of monsters, and then as an author, you have like the pool of monsters like vampires and werewolves and stuff like that, and you do kind of struggle to come up with your own monsters, but it's always good when you do find like your own monster. Maybe anything kind of like big giant monster on the loose, tearing people up. I'd read it. I'd love it. I used to do a lot of go to a lot of car boot sales. That's what I know was you'd call it like a flea market maybe in America, like a garage sale. It's just like a big car park, and people would bring stuff and sell stuff. And you'd buy stuff really cheap. And I went there, and I don't know if you're familiar with Guy N. Smith. He's a British horror author, and he did. I found a copy of Killer Crabs, and it was 50p. And I just read it when I was about 11 or 12 and fell in love with it. And I went back next week and I bought this lady was selling all these books, all these Guy N. Smith books, like 50p, and I just bought them all. And I just started devouring them all. And yeah, but I just love monsters. I don't know why. I don't know why. I just love reading books about monsters. And as an author, you have to try and come up with like an original monster, and that's the challenge.
Well, I remember like this is obviously before social media. I mean, you were probably there. Like you have like computer when I was growing up. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that stuff. So all this stuff you kind of like lived in your own world. You had to like make everything up in your mind. Like you'd read books and you had to picture it. So I remember that was a big inspiration. But it's like. I kind of like fight the line between, well, am I, is that somebody else's world or am I thinking of my own? But I felt always inspired by it. Did you have kind of the same upbringing?
Yeah, well, because we're kind of like an industrial wasteland mixed with like beautiful farmland. So I read quite a bit of Stephen King. I think I didn't read the book. But I watched Stand By Me loads and loads, and it's about a group of friends who go off on an adventure to find a body. And where I lived, it was kind of like that. So I don't know, you just kind of like you get kind of like touched by a film, and it kind of influences your life. So then, once I saw the film, I kind of went on adventures, hoping to kind of recreate that in a way. Not hoping to find a body, but a bunch of friends. I'm just going off and exploring, away from home from the first time, and so that's what we used to do. We used to just kind of disappear into the wilderness and just explore mines and stuff like that, and just kind of being that place away from home and trying to not find yourself in your own horror stuff, but just to have adventures. And it's just strange how a book or a film can just kind of shape your life in that way. And Stand By Me, the Goonies, Stand By Me, stuff like that. And just to go out and find your own adventure, to be inspired by something, which inspires you to go off and just live life, get out of the house, and just find something to do. I don't know, we went to some pretty shady places. Abandoned mines aren't the best place for kids, but that's what we did.
No, I hear there's a lot of places. Like I always kind of hope that like maybe around the next corner there'll be like some other world or there's something else weird going on. And like we're in a lot of I'd be in a lot of military bases and they have like abandoned training camps from World War II and stuff like that. Or we'd go BMX biking. We'd end up in like some farmer's field and stuff. And there's always imagining there was something weird around the corner. It would never be there. And I kind of knew in my head nothing would be there, but I was like, maybe it would be awesome if I came across something like that. I think a lot of that has helped inspire me later on.
Yeah.
You find that like your growing up helped inspire you later on?
In my stories, I do kind of draw on my own experiences and where I grew up. I don't explicitly say that my stories are kind of based on my own town, but I draw inspiration from it. I mean, the first story I won a prize for, the first I got accepted, was called The Chicken in Black. It's about zombie chickens. And my first job was in the chicken factory. So when I first kind of sat down to like, I'm going to write a story, I'm going to publish, I'm going to send it off, I'm going to try and get published. That thing that comes to mind is, write what you know. So I thought, okay, I like zombies. Okay, I can do a zombie story. Okay, I worked at a chicken factory. And I remember the story about Mike the Headless Chicken. I don't know if you heard that story. So
no.
There's a farmer, and he got his chicken one day, and he got he's good at cooking for his team. He hit this chicken with his axe, and the chicken got up, and he started walking around, and it kind of hit the back of the chicken's head like that. So much of the brain still existed. So the chicken was still alive. Yeah, but I had no eyes, no beak, and this chicken refused to die. And so he gave it some water, and the chicken carried on living. Next day, still alive. and he got some corn and he chewed it up, and he kept feeding the chicken, and he started getting people in to look at Mike the Headless Chicken, and he made loads of money off this headless chicken, and it just somehow might be like, so I got this idea of these zombie chickens. So I did a story about this chicken factory, and all these dead chickens, they all come back to life and start attacking people. Now at the time, you're in a boring job, and it's not very inspirational. But no, later on, no, every part of your life, you can learn from every single moment of your life. And so I was this boring job, just packing chickens, and I could still do the muscle memory of how you get an elastic band and pack these chickens. And I did it for like one winter, and it just stuck with me. And I did this story, and I thought it's just weird how these little moments of your life, they mean nothing to you at the time, but later on you can draw on them for inspiration. So it's just weird how inspiration works. But I suppose that coming back to like being a kid and going on adventures, I think that's what you're kind of hungering for. You're looking for inspiration. You're looking for something just different. No, don't stay in one job for your entire life. No, do all different things. Go out and just get as much knowledge as you can from different people, different cultures, different jobs, and just explore. And I think that's what I was hungering for. And I'm still like that now. I love going to new places and just that people have abandoned. It's just kind of, you can get a sense of the story of that place.
Yeah, I love going to old ruins and stuff, and like Chichen Itza or Machu Picchu or anything like that. I get hugely inspired by that. I kind of had this. When I got kicked out of my house when I was 18, so when I got my first job, it was pretty bad. It was Chuck E. Cheese, but I had a string of like pretty horrible jobs, and I remember with every job, I was like, I don't want this to be my life. I really want to tell stories, and I'm just trapped in this job. And I felt like I was just like, every minute I was there, it was wasting my time when I could be doing something better. Did you have kind of the same feeling?
Well, yeah, definitely. I was at that job 4 months, and it was during winter, so I lost all my sunlight for every weekend during a winter, and it was just cold and depressing. And I didn't stay there long. And from then on, I went to be a bingo caller. So I was doing bingo. This is before I left college, but I think everyone should do shitty jobs. It should be mandatory. So it makes you not want to do that job anymore, and it kind of pushes you to go on to better things, hopefully.
It helps build your character, yeah, because you have a real life experience. I think people that fall into something awesome right away kind of take it for granted.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
What do you focus on more? Because like there's several different genres of horror. I mean, if you get super nerdy and technical about it, there's a whole bunch of genres. But like, there's one that's more like just kind of like the fucked up person, like the Henry Portrait of Serial Killer, or like the American Psycho, where it's just one guy doing like crazy shit. And then there's stuff that's more like The Fly or Pumpkinhead or, The Shining, where it's like you have all sorts of mystical forces or monsters or whatever coming into it. Is there one you prefer?
Well, I like monsters. I like the idea of some sort of creature on the loose and tearing people up. But I like morality tales as well. I used to read a lot of Roald Dahl, and his stories essentially just like slashes for kids. Kids just being picked up one by one. But before he wrote for kids, he did he did short stories for adults, and there's always like a twist in the tale. I suppose the best example I could think of is Richard Layman's The Island, which is like a big thick book like that. And then the twist is on like the very last paragraph, the last sentence is a twist, and it's beautiful how he crafted it, and to construct the whole story and then have that twist on the very last line. And it kind of turns the entire story, like this big thick book, 400 pages long, and it completely turns the whole story around. And so I like the idea of teaching the readers a lesson. You can not just have a monster on loose, like a Frankenstein type story, be aware, don't meddle with this or you'll get giant crabs. But it imparts a lesson to the reader. And it can be a monster, or it can be, I don't know, serial killer or whatever, but to teach the reader something. Have a story that stays with them.
One thing that really, I don't know if it really bothers you, but one thing that really bothers me is when they have like a whole like string of complex events going on, and then it just turns out to be a dream at the end. It's like, to me, it kind of robs the intensity of all that stuff that happened.
Hmm.
Do you have an opinion on that?
Uh, it was all a dream. Yeah, I think it's not as like an ultimate twist. I think it's okay to have it to explore like the psyche of a character during the story. No, to have them wake from a dream, and it kind of reflects their feeling. At the moment they might have some anxiety about something. I mean, I have anxiety dreams, so it happens in real life as well. You get anxiety dreams. I think it's good to explore that in the story, but not to have the entire story as a dream. I think that's a bit of a cop out. I think if you
Yeah,
kind of
that's
write
fair.
if you write yourself
Way
into
overused trope.
yeah, if you can write yourself into a corner and think, oh, how do I get this? Oh, it's all a dream, or it's all like a matrix. It's all imaginary. But yeah, I don't mind it as part of the story, but don't make it the entire story.
Well, I notice there's a big difference between Europe and the U.S. Like the USA love happy endings and they love heroes. And like if you look at like the old like they've been turned into Disney-fied kid stories now. But if you look at the original fables and stuff, a lot of them are really really dark. And I know, have you seen the movie The Mist?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you know at the end
yeah.
it has like a very dark ending, and apparently Stephen King saw that movie, and his book doesn't have that ending, and he saw the movie and goes, "I wish I thought of that."
Yeah,
But I know a lot of people have seen the movie here in the U.S., and they're like, "Oh, that ruined it! It's such a depressing ending." I thought it was a great ending.
yeah.
What's your opinion on the dark downfall at the end as opposed to the happy ending?
I think it all depends on the story. I think the original story, The Mist, it's kind of open ended. They don't find sanctuary in a way. So, but I think that in the movie, it was like a natural conclusion. You couldn't have, with a movie, you can't really have an open ending as such. I think it was good to explore it a bit further. In its, because I think people were aware. Well, people are aware of the original ending, where they're going on. They escape the supermarket and they're exploring. I think no, that would be a cop out. I think making that extra twist, making it a bit darker. I think it shocked everyone who read the book. So anyone who's watching the film, it will obviously would shock them, but it shocks the original readers. So it's kind of like something extra that you wouldn't have expected. So I don't mind a happy ending. I don't mind a downbeat ending, but I think it's just it can go either way. It can go either way. As long as there's an ending, as long as there's
A strong story too, right?
yeah, as long as there's a strong ending, because I don't know. It's at the end of the book. It's kind of a cop out ending. It's not happy or sad. It's just you thinking, oh, will they find help? It was a good surprise. It's a good surprise for fans of the original story, which I was.
I'm wondering if that's more of a U.S. thing, where they like really strive for a happier ending and like stronger heroes and all this stuff. Because I watch like I don't know if you've seen the French movies like Martyrs or Inside, or Frontiers, anything like that. And they have very dark endings, but there's like a lot of complex stuff that happens in it, and there aren't clear heroes.
Yeah, I've not seen them, but I don't know. I'm thinking of other films with dark endings. Maybe I don't know, like The Evil Dead. They all seem to have quite downbeat endings in a way.
It was a great movie, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think they all end on kind of a downer. What's the one? A Cabin in the Woods. That
Right.
really dark ending in that. And I think it's like a bravery thing. It depends on your audience. I think people are craving darker endings, kind of to cheer them up from reality more.
Well, if you notice, I don't know if this is also a U.S. thing, but like especially in the like slasher horror films, like the Friday the 13th, like it's like it was almost a morality play. It's like if you had sex, you got killed. If you smoked weed, you got killed. I don't know if that's common in Europe at all, but I know that for a while that was the thing in the U.S.
What you think there was like an agenda from the filmmakers to get people to stop having sex and taking drugs?
I don't think it was an agenda so much as they were like that kind of fed their audience at the time. Because I mean, the U.S. is way more religious, say, than Europe is. So I was wondering if they had like they were kind of locked in that morality. So like, yeah, it kind of reinforces my core beliefs or something like that.
I'll tell you, I think it's more like it's you see these teenagers getting chopped up and murdered, and they're drinking and they're taking drugs and they're having sex. I think no, that audience, they would have done those things most likely. So it kind of puts them on edge a little bit. Oh, look at these people being punished by this mass killing because they've had sex and they're taking drugs and they're drinking. I've done that. Am I next? And I think that's what why they do it. They're not doing it as a morality play. Say this is bad. It's kind of to unnerved individual because most likely they've done one of them things.
Okay. Do you have an opinion on like some people hate when you bring sci-fi into horror? They like try and keep it a separate genre, and some people really like it. Like it, I don't know if you've seen the movie Event Horizon or Pitch Black or anything like that. And those are kind of horror movies based in space. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think they're good cousins. I think they go together well. No, sci-fi is exploring the unknown, and horror is like this is essentially the same, isn't it? No, I think science fiction it's kind of going out there, and horror is like it's a personal thing. I think, yeah. Look, man, Aliens is one of my favorite films. Alien, love
Alien's a
it.
great film. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got my kids into it, and they absolutely adore it. They're just like massive Aliens fans now, and I couldn't be happy. I'm so proud of them. and, but yeah, I've no if it's done well and it's not like, but I don't know. I like cheap campy like B movies and stuff like that. I think a lot of
Well, like Killer Clowns.
yeah, I remember watching Killer Clowns and just being like absolutely fucking terrified of it as a kid because obviously I had a note from my mum I could get any film I want out. So and I came from like a small town of like 5,000 people, so it was seeing this like small town horror and knowing I came from a small town. It was like Critters and The Blob. That was like my town. My town.
Critters what I named my dog is. I named him Critter, and people are like, "We named." I'm like, after that movie. That movie's awesome.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
obviously a B movie, but it's an awesome B movie.
yeah. I mean, I think the thing with B movies, I think their idea is kind of betrayed by the budget. Um, but looking back, they do look kind of cheap and campy. I mean, I remember showing that Critters to my sister and brother-in-law, and they just laughed at how stupid it was.
You kind of gotta buy into the thing, but to make it work.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly. You have to kind of buy into the idea. Um, but I think there's a lot of good ideas out there to explore, and I think the more we progress, as a species, with more, the more science comes into our lives,
right.
there's more things, there's more potential. I think there's more potential for more like sci-fi horror.
Well, I think one of the early genres of that was one of my favorites, H.P. Lovecraft. Because like as there wasn't a huge amount of technology in the 1930s, but he like it seems like he tried to incorporate what he could, with like creatures from another world and other dimensions and stuff. And now, if you read dimensional theory, that's just kind of accepted.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's like what I said before. It's like imagination kind of going beyond what is possible in society at the moment, and that's what sci-fi is. Well, then you got to add in good things that can come from sci-fi. You can imagine like new technologies that make people live longer, but then horror kind of presents like the flip side to it. Like the Frankenstein side. Be careful of messing with nature and science because it could go tits up. You could cure like a disease, but then you might create another disease because of it. But
Right. Like a world-killing virus or whatever.
yeah. So I don't know, and it's that it's like stepping into the unknown, and sci-fi horror is like the worst like case scenario of what could possibly go wrong, and it's not like I enjoy seeing things go wrong, but it's good to be aware of it, and and to if you can imagine it going wrong, it kind of makes you aware of what could go wrong. So you're more cautious of that kind of going on. Well, exactly. We need these things. We have Frankenstein. What could possibly go wrong, and it does go wrong. So don't meddle with nature. But now we've got like Jurassic Park, and I don't know how far away are we from like bringing dinosaurs back? And that's what Jurassic Park kind of explores. Jurassic Park it's a sci-fi horror, and now we're closer than ever to making that a reality. They're on about bringing back woolly mammoths in like the next 10 years, and I'm just waiting for the first headline where someone's gored by like a woolly mammoth. I'm like, well, told you so.
Well, they're trying to create one now. Like they got one, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen, and someone's going to get killed by a woolly mammoth. Do you see the thing in the news the other day? They say an elephant never forgets, and there was a woman and she got killed by an elephant. Do you hear about that?
No.
Yeah, she got killed by an elephant.
It's usually really mellow too.
Yeah. She got killed by this elephant. Anyway, so they had this funeral pyre burning this lady. She's about 71. Anyway, this elephant came, stormed the funeral, and got hold of her body, chucked it in the river.
I don't know. I think to a certain point, it's social Darwinism. It's like, what can you do? It's just,
No, but I want to know, what did that lady do
to piss off the elephant?
And then came and he messed up a funeral as well. And it's like, imagine like a woolly mammoth doing that. It's only a matter of time. Or what's the other thing I saw the other day? They'd made this like sentient, like human blob of like human cells. And it
sounds like you're working another story there.
Yeah, well, my stepson keeps saying to me, "Oh, I've just finished university. I've just finished an English and history degree, so I want to like have a qualification behind me as a writer, just because I'm just like a glorified amateur." So my stepson keeps saying, "Oh, when are you going to write another story? When?"
Yeah, but some of the best writers, I think, are basically amateurs, and they just manage to put out amazing work. I don't know. Like, obviously, going to school helps, but, like, I went to art school. It helped my art, but it's like you kind of have the talent or you don't.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the first short story I sent off, I got accepted on a £100. I'm like, oh, maybe it's just natural talent, but I still feel like a fraud. I still feel like an imposter. So that's why I spent 3 years at university, during the plague, a lad, to get like an English and history degree, just so I feel like a bit more qualified to know what I'm talking about. But as I was saying about, they created this blob of human cells, and they kind of started making it sentient, and it's like a blob of human cells that's actually alive and separate from everything else. And they give it fucking eyes, they can see. And it's like another state of consciousness, like to be like terrified of this thing, and it's like looking up. And it's alive, and they've made this thing. There's a story there. I just love finding stuff in the news each day, thinking there's a story there. How can I write a story about that? So now I finished university. I'm looking for my next like story idea. And
you finish it now?
Yeah. I've got like a 2-1. I hope. So I handed I did it. My dissertation was on like horror in children's books, children's stories. So. I feel a bit more qualified.
Like the Brothers Grimm fairy tales and how they were all originally dark until just ruined up.
More using that as a base, but using more like modern texts, more contemporary text. It's an objection in children's books and why it's used, because kids love like slime and like snot and shit and stuff like that. So I kind of did a dissertation on that. But I think it worked.
I was horrified and I was attracted to it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Kids are into like slime and stuff, and why do children's books like use like disgusting things? Like, why do kids like it? So I did like a dissertation on that. I did quite well, so I'm happy.
I'm sure there's a little psychology behind that, like why.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think Jean-Paul Sartre, he wrote like an entire book on slime. So I was just reading, how can you write this much about slime? Well, I used it, and it was good. It was good.
Cool. All right, so I'm sure that your writing has changed over time. Like most artists are their own worst critics, and they go, "I need to do more of this. I need to do more of that." What do you see that you changed a lot? What do you see that you're doing? Like you're reaching for more, or cutting out more?
I love doing short stories, but I don't know. They don't make much money. And the idea is to have like a novel you sell, and then to sell it for like $10 or whatever, and to make some money. Ultimately, that's what it's about making a bit of money. But no, I'm not a hack. the end of the day. But it's money's just a consequence of writing. You have to do something with these stories. You have to sell them somewhere. But I try and condense a story to as small a thing as possible. That's why I've done so many short stories, because I've just not been bothered to flesh it out to a novel. Because a lot of novels, some are good, but sometimes you can read a novel and you get to the end of it and you think, oh, that was rubbish. I didn't enjoy that at all. Or you get to the end of it and I really enjoyed it. But you can do the same with a short story. You get the same kind of trigger in your brain of finishing a short story as you do like a big massive novel. So I think more people need to read more short stories, and short stories and art to condense like something down to like 30 pages, whatever, and still get the same point across as you could as writing a novel. I think that is an art, and I like to hone that as much as possible.
So you want to write more short stories in the future, or you want to write more novels? What do you have in mind?
Well, I want to do both. But no, a novel is a lot of work. I know a novel takes like 6 months, a year to do, and I can knock a short story out in like a week, polished.
Yeah, I remember one of my publishers telling me, like, I was like, why is my collection of short stories selling way worse than everything else? It's like, short stories always don't sell. It's like when you put a collection together, people love novels. They don't like to buy like a collection of like vaguely related or unrelated short stories.
I don't know. I think it's opposite for me, because I self-published Devil Let Me Go, which is like a collection of stuff I'd had like published elsewhere, and then I got all the rights back, so I published myself, and I sold it at conventions. And I used that line. And I said, "Oh, you get the same satisfaction as finishing a short story as you do a long story." And people, "Oh, that's interesting. I'll buy that book." So yeah, try that.
Okay, yeah, no, that's it. That's a good process. So, what are you working on now? Are you working on a short story? Are you working on a longer story?
I'm working on absolutely nothing. I've finished university. I've finished all my essays. I've done essays on education and Victorian sexuality and like children's stories and modernism and Gothic. So I've been doing all these stupid essays, and they're all away now. So now I'm just breathing, and I'm just acclimatizing to having finished university, but also not having a job. So I don't. First time in my life, I've got my kids. They're my anchor, but I'm completely free to do whatever I want to do now. I don't have a 9-to-5 job. I'm actually working at. I've actually got like a job at university. I'm student engagement. I'm trying to get more people to come to university, more mature students like myself. So I'm kind of reborn in a way. I'm starting a new chapter, so I am going to get back into writing. It's just a matter of kind of tying up a few loose ends. So I don't know. Watch this space.
What I do is I try to take notes all the time. I find that really helps. Even if I don't have something in mind for a story, I'm like, hey, that's a good idea, and I'll write it down. Like I have a note section on my phone. It's like stacked up with notes. Do you do the same sort of thing? Like I can be watching a movie or driving down the street, like anything that sparks my interest.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, I've had ideas for short stories. I'd be walking down the street and someone would say something, and it's just like a part of a conversation between two strangers, and you just hear it and you think, fucking hell, what if? And it just goes off and it's a story idea. And I mean, when I did Starers, I used to have a recurring nightmare about people trying to get into my house and touching the windows and stuff like that. And then one night I was closing the curtains, and there was an old man straight across the road from our house. It's like 3 stories, so it kind of stood out. And we was used to people looking at our house as they walk past. And we had like these mirrored windows, so we could see them, but they couldn't see us. And then one time, there was an old man. He was staring straight at our house from this bus stop across the road. And I was closing the curtains. And as I was closing the curtains, I thought to myself, what if he's still there in the morning? And it started raining. And I thought, what if it rains all night? And I opened the curtains and he's still there. And I thought, there's an idea there. And my first novel was called Starers. And I just had this idea of people staring at my house. And like the next day, I thought, what if I open the curtains? That old man is still there, but he's not alone, and there's like 10 other people, and they're all staring at my house. And then, but what if more people? What's like a massive crowd? What if loads and loads of people? And it kind of originally was called Followers, and it kind of turned into Starers. And it's just like the idea of everyone in the world, kind of focusing their attention on one person, one family, and it's weird how that's kind of, I don't know, it kind of makes sense now, and how social media's taken off. How now you think about like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, how all attention kind of focuses on them, and it kind of ran with that. But yeah, I put notes on my phone. I have notepads. I'll wake up after a nightmare or something like that, and I write down my nightmare or my dream or something like that on a little notepad. I used to do that, but yeah, I need to get back into that habit and just collecting ideas and just like cherry picking stuff, and that's how you make a story up. It's you cherry pick these different ideas from your life, and that's how, and you just combine them. It's like different bits of clay, and you kind of put them together. And, that fits, that works. And that's exactly how I work. I do little notes all over the place. So you kind of slowly build like a story up from like little bits of Lego, and eventually it makes like a house.
So I noticed that like when I was a kid, I was always like, yeah, I have all this fantastical stuff, but I don't have any ideas. And now I have like more ideas than I can put to paper.
Yeah,
It seems like as I've gotten older, because obviously your brain stores more and more and more memories, and you get more experience, and eventually it's like a huge clusterfuck. And they kind of like ride on each other, and like you'll see something, but it reminds you of this, or you smell something, it reminds you of this. And it seems like the stories just kind of come naturally now, and like, there's more I could write than I have time to write. Have you kind of had the same experience?
Yeah. Well, writing, it's a lonely pursuit, and it's finding that time, that personal time. Do you think, if you're a writer nowadays, usually you can have like a 9-to-5 job as well. You can have family, and you have to treat it as like a hobby or a pastime. Unless you're really successful, you can't really devote like 8 hours a day to writing. But you have to make time from it. So I used to get up like at 5 a.m. and I used to write then before everyone else got up. I used to do that, or I used to like stay up late, because you still need to have time with your family, and you want to watch a bit of TV, watch a film with your partner or whatever, or go for a walk or go to the cinema. And it's hard to kind of cram that in. But I was really lucky, to be honest. When I started writing my short stories and a few novels. At the time, I was a delivery driver for an office furniture company, and on my first day, I was sat in the passenger seat, and the guy was driving to wherever he was going. I said, "Oh, what do I do?" He says, "Oh, you just sit there." And then when we get there, he goes, "We'll swap places and you drive back." I said, "Okay then." So I started taking my laptop to work. And so I was writing stories on the company dime. So I'd have 4 hours every day, pretty much. So I'd be delivering to London or Scotland or whatever. So I'd have 4 hours, and I just had to sit there, and I'd either read a book or I'd do a short story. And you have to find the time somewhere. And that's what I did. I wrote on the company dime, and I did that for 9 years.
No, when I started as a tattoo artist, I'd be like drawing and painting, when I wasn't tattooing. If you look at like Stephen King, like he talks about how you have to write all the time. He's like, it doesn't matter what it's about, you just have to write all the time. And then you have other people that will write a little bit here and a little bit there, but it'll be brilliant. So, and I kind of feel like sometimes Stephen King is way too wordy. I remember I read Thinner. I don't know if you read the book Thinner, but
no, not yet, no.
It's a good story, but it would have been a good 30-minute story. 30-page story. Instead, he stretched it out into like 150-page whatever novel, and like one whole chapter is spent describing the toilet paper. It's like you do not need to spend a whole chapter describing the toilet paper. So I don't know. Do you have feelings on that?
Well, I like short stories, so it's being able to capture that same feeling. With a novel, you got a bit more breathing space, but if you can nail it down as as thin as possible and still get the same feeling, but I think a novel gives you just a bit more scope. You can have more characters. You can describe the toilet paper if it's important to the plot. But I don't feel a need for that. I'm quite at times quite a sparse writer. I don't know if you've read Cormac McCarthy. He doesn't use any punctuation pretty much whatsoever, and it's quite sparse. It's quite brutal, and I quite like that. But in terms of, obviously I've been on kind of a hiatus the past 3 years, but I don't know. For me, Facebook's my diary in a way. Twitter's my diary. Instagram's my diary. So I'm still out being creative in a way. I'm still taking pictures, and I don't. Some people think I'm funny, but that's what I try to do, like funny Facebook posts and that, and that's kind of me, kind of stretching that writer muscle in a way. People don't do diaries as much anymore. They got Facebook and stuff like that. So I tried to do that. I tried to do like little jokes and stuff. I don't think Facebook should be for saying, "Oh, I'm making a sandwich," and then a picture of your sandwich. I think Facebook has its good and bad sides. And I like to do jokes. I like to make people laugh. I like to share interesting stories. So I'm still kind of flexing my writer brain in a way, just by doing these like stupid little posts. In a way, they're kind of like what's the word? Like little micro stories in a way. And I still take pictures. I'm still being creative, but I'm not doing like the heavy lifting of writing a novel or a short story. So. Well, I don't know. I do need to get back into it. I feel guilty for not writing.
But you don't subscribe to that. You got to write all the time. Even if you throw it away, you got to write all the time.
It was finding time for it as well, isn't it? It's I just don't find the time. I don't find the time, to be honest. But I have been writing all the time. I've been doing essays. I've been researching. So I've kind of focused my...
Get in the game a little bit, even if it's not straight up.
Yeah. I've kind of had to acclimatise to like a different writing technique, but I think writing's a good form of therapy. I think everyone should know. If you don't have a diary, I think everyone should try and write a shitty poem, at least once in a life.
Get something out there so you kind of keep the language flowing and the
I think it's good to be creative, and for the first 20 years of my life, well, probably the first 27 years of my life, I didn't have anything published. I just used to write for myself, and it's like imagine, I wish a film like this existed, and so I'd write it myself. I used to do film scripts of films that would never be made. So it's films I'd want to see, and so I just did it myself.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What happened in those film scripts? Do you ever pitch any of them?
No, not really. No. There's like kind of like Tarantino, like crime thrillers.
Do they hold up now? Have you read any of them recently?
Not recently. No. I think they're in the attic somewhere. To be honest, I've got like a big stack of my old papers. I don't want to go back. I just want to keep going forward. If I can remember anything good from them stories, it'll come back to me. Well, if it's shit, it'll just be forgotten. So there's no to say when you're writing a story, you should do the first draft, then you should just throw it all away, burn it, and then try to remember the good bits, and then that's your focus of your story. So okay. I'm not going back to any old text. That's it. They're gone. They're gone.
I wrote my first book when I was in fifth grade. It's horrible. I'm glad I don't have it now. It was like giant robots fighting in space. I was like, what was I thinking? But you got to move on.
That sounds like a good idea. I might steal that.
What's been your experience with publishers so far?
I thought doing like splatterpunk, that's great. So, you could kind of see the heart of it. There's a lot of love there, and I know a lot of the people who read it. I can read reviews. I love.
Well, you tell the guy's really into it too.
Yeah. So I know the DIY stuff you like, the more independent stuff I feel more love for. I mean, I've done a few books with Severed Press, and that was fantastic and everything. But I felt like I was doing a lot of the promotion myself, because I'd have like an advert on their site and that was it. And so a lot of the promotion was up to me. So which I don't mind doing. I was quite a shy kid, but then when I started like doing short like stories and stuff, and doing conventions, you kind of have to become your own like spokesperson, your own salesperson, do your own promotion. And I think that was good for me. So in a way, I'm glad they didn't promote me as much as they did, because it did a lot for my confidence to promote myself. Because the idea is, you get a book deal and you think they're just going to deal with all the publicity. But I found myself doing a lot of it myself, which I didn't mind. But working like with small, I like working like with independent presses and like smaller presses and stuff like that, because I know it's just a bit more kind of feels more like family in a way.
Right. And they're definitely more involved in it. It's not like, well, this is the popular thing at the moment, so we're going to promote this. Like
Yeah.
I've noticed that it's like whatever they think will sell, they promote. But it's like they kind of don't have their finger on the button. Like there are bands that like were ignored for a year, and then they finally played one of their videos at like 12 at night, and then suddenly they blew up. Like Guns N' Roses were like that. Like nobody thought they'd make any money. Like, and George Lucas, who had made the first Star Wars, like everybody said it's going to be garbage. They only played it like midnight at a couple theaters, and then suddenly it blew up. So
I think that's the beauty of being a creative. You don't know what's going to take off and be popular. Look at Squid Game. That took him 10 years to make, like from concept to it being on TV. And you can look at your own story like every day for like a year and think this is shit, and before you even get it published. So, and then it gets trashed by the critics. So
it's true. Yeah, and the thing is, they'll trash it, and then 10 years later they'll say it's a classic.
Yeah. It's
like they did that with Blade Runner. They hated Blade Runner when it came out, and now it's like, oh, that's one of the best movies ever.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. You don't know what's going to be good until it's like out there, and that's like the gamble you have to do as a creative. You put in your heart and soul, and you're spending all this time, away from your family. I could be out going for a run, or I could be with my family. I go out for a nice meal, but instead I'm writing this story, and you don't know if it's going to be any good until it's finished. It's a massive gamble of your own personal time and your limited life on this planet, and you're spending it on this story, and then. But when you kind of do get feedback from it, from reviews and stuff like that, it is, I didn't waste my time. Thank God for that. And you can kind of see what people like about your story, and then it's kind of pointing for yourself and like, do more of this, do less of that. So yeah, you have to learn from your reviews and not to waste your time on certain things.
Well, I've also noticed, like, there'll be stuff you think is awesome that nobody else thinks is awesome. There's stuff you think is crap, and everybody else like, that's the best thing you've ever done. And you're like, what? It's like, so over time, like some stuff, like it doesn't necessarily come out the way that you think it does. At least that's been my experience.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, I did a sea monster story called Midway. I published with Severed Press. And they said, "Oh, can we make it a bit longer? Because it's a bit of it's like a short story length. Can you make it a bit longer?" So I've got to pad this out a bit to make it like novella length. And I just added like a few bits, and then afterwards I had a review, and they picked out some of the bits I'd added, and it's like I made the right choice there. I'm glad I padded it out and added these extra bits because it actually paid off in the end. But you don't know that until later. So I know it's all a gamble.
What do you think of agents?
I've never had one. I can't afford one. If someone wanted to represent me and started wanting to tout my stories about, I'd be happy for them to do that and for them to take 10%. But I've never had an agent. I've always been my own agent. I'd take that 10%.
Well, there's a lot of people, they won't even look at your stuff unless you have an agent. But then those are also the bigger publishers that are going to really like fuck with your manuscript and tell you got to make changes that you don't want to make. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, I think.
I've never got that far. I've never approached any the big five publishers or whoever they are. I mean, I think Severed Press are like the biggest horror publisher in Australia. I thought that'll do for me because I enjoyed some of their stories, some of their books before. So that's why I approached them. And I was over the moon when they said yeah. So I don't know. I've never had an agent, so I can't possibly comment. Okay.
Sorry. So the last question is, what do you think of editors? Like, do you edit your own stuff? Do you have an editor that you prefer?
I'll finish a short story, and no, the editor of an anthology or whatever, no, they'll read through it. But usually before I send anything off, no, I've got like I have like a minor fan base of a few hundred people. So I'll usually put a call out. No, I've got a short story. Do you want to read it out after some feedback? And I don't know, maybe like 10, 20 people will say yes, and then maybe 5 or 10 will get back to me after actually having read it. And I don't know, it's having beta readers to read your stuff. I think that's really helpful to show it to like another pair of eyes and get some feedback. I've always done that. I've never just sort of typed a story then sent it off thinking that's brilliant, that'll do. It's a story's never finished. You have to abandon it essentially.
Do you have a one go-to guy though, or is it mainly you run it by whoever's kind of around you and think will give you good feedback?
No, I'm a complete whore. And anyone who wants to read it, I can't afford to pay an editor. I mean, I know that's I don't know, I wish I could, but if there's people willing to read it, and usually they'll pick out a few mistakes, stuff I've missed, stuff like that. But I do know like professional editors, and I've worked with them before, and they're good. I think you need an editor because I think you do miss stuff with your own eyes, and I think reading it out loud helps as well. Get a quiet room somewhere and read your story out loud. Actually hearing it, it's like it's having someone else read it to you in a way. You kind of listen to your own story differently if you read it out loud. But yeah, no, editors, yeah, definitely as many as possible for me.
Well, I've noticed. I don't know if this is more of like a U.S. thing, but I noticed a lot of editors are like frustrated writers. So they'll try and rewrite it the way they would write the story, as opposed to edit it so your voice sounds the way it should.
If that's how they feel, that's up to them. That's maybe I'm a frustrated editor.
Well, no, I like your stuff. I'm glad you're in the game. Thanks for doing this interview. I don't want to take any more of your time, but yeah, no, I appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.